Good day, guys. Coach Chad here. Today, we are going to be going over a little bit more information on your next steps in the quantum leap, body transformation program. Today, we're going to be discussing body weight. So recording your body weight correctly throughout the next week, as well as updating your progress tracker. And we are going to start getting into our nutritional audit. So I'm going to review the nutritional audit and how we came up with the numbers that we came up with for your starting spot and your starting journey to tracking your caloric contents and your protein levels inside of MyFitnessPal or whatever fitness tracker you're using. We're also going to address the 7-day log results, which are all different sheets inside of your personal progress tracker. And the last thing that we're going to do is we're going to address updating your goals in MyFitnessPal. So how do you update your goals? That will be at the latter part of this video. So we're going to get started right away with the progress tracker. I'm going to quickly share my screen here and make sure that you guys can see this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through this with a fake client. That client will be myself. I'm going to make some numbers up in here, but I've already done this in a previous video. But for now, I got my name at the top. Your guys' name, of course, will already be in there. And we mentioned you're going to write your goal in here. This is actually going to change over the next little while, simply because as we dig more into goals, you're going to start to recognize maybe what your goal should be. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about where you want to place your goals. And the base kind of concept is the fact I don't want to wait. I would like a body fat percentage. You can make your goal whatever you wish, but if it's going to be based around body transformation, it should be built around your body fat percentage, which is a really great tool. So on here, I put my goal would be to hit 5% on the body fat percentage in the in-body scan. That's where I'd like to be. My lowest right now has been 8.2. Much higher than that over Christmas and the last few months, but I'm going to get back down to 5%. So I'm going to break some new records. That's the goal. Now, we initially put your original weight in here, so I'll put 246.6, and that's where it auto logs all of your information here. Every Friday, you guys are to update your data, so you should have updated your data, your measurements, your body weight, and last week, and now you'll be into this week, which you're going to update this one again. Don't worry if these numbers are up or down. It doesn't really matter. We just came off the Christmas season. The goal is moving forward that we have a progress tracker that you guys are getting used to, creating the habit of filling out and creating, and also just working in so you can see your progress and keep yourself accountable. So my initial one was 146. I'm just going to make these numbers up. 119 on the waist, and let's say hip was 120, and then my measurements down here would be the exact same. These were put in by your coach, and my height is 170. Now I'm in all centimeters. You're welcome to do yours in inches, whatever you feel more comfortable in. Doesn't really matter. Okay. Now this was just simply to mark off that this happened. This was created. There's going to be a waist to height ratio here, which is not calculated right now in mine, but it will be in your guys's. Your job is to continue filling this out every single week on Friday morning. So remember, we're going to go to body weight now. Body weight, you should be recording your body weight in MyFitnessPal every single morning after or upon waking. So it usually is after no drinking water, no drinking food, after a bathroom break. That would be when you weigh yourself. That is the most consistent time for weighing yourself, but we don't want a snapshot of the day. We would like a snapshot of the average of the week. So what you're going to have to do is take your measurement every single day for the 7 days. When you're complete the 7 days, you're going to add those up and divide them by 7. That will give you your average body weight. And right now I'm using pounds. You're welcome to use kilograms if you like, but for most of us, we will most likely be in pounds. So you can maintain your measurement in here, and it will start to auto calculate your loss or gain of weight over the next few weeks. And again, every Friday morning, you're going to do this data. At a minimum, you would want to see 3 weight measurements per week, but that's an absolute minimum, preferably 5 to 7, ideally every day. You're doing your body weight. That way you get a really good snapshot of where you're at, and it provides a very decent average, which is what we are looking for. We don't want, I repeat again, we do not want that 1 day snapshot of where your weight is, because there's too much fluctuation, which you're going to find out in your weight day to day. And that body weight is going to become incredibly important. It's going to be absolutely a must that you guys get this done. As we go into the nutritional audit, the body weight is going to be how we dictate your caloric loads moving forward. So let's jump over to our nutritional audit, which is our 4th sheet on your document. Now in here, I've got my name in here. My body weight is 246.6, let's say. My body fat percentage, let's say, is 14.1. Oops, wrong spot. We're gonna go 14.1. Now that's gonna auto-populate a lot of this information for me, okay? So it gives me my lean body mass, which is what this one was that I deleted. It gives me my lean body mass, which is 211.83, and my body fat weight, which is 34.77. So in order to get down to 5%, I could do some calculations as to how much of a percentage gap I need in order to hit my goal weight, but that's not gonna be that imperative to me right now. It's more about the in-body scans I'm gonna be using and the actual percentage. All I wanna see right now is that the weight is on a consistent drop week by week. The next phase, as we go down this document, you're going to see resting metabolic rate. And it says catch McCardle formula, 21.6 times lean body mass in kilograms plus 370. Now, that is a formula that we use in calculating your resting metabolic rate. Now, the resting metabolic rate is essentially, just imagine you lying down in bed and staying there all day. You still have to live, you breathe, you digest, you function. There's lots of things that are going on inside the body that need to be completed. So my resting metabolic rate for caloric load is 2,449, okay? Or we could say 2,450 calories per day is my baseline, which I need just to survive and not be dropping weight inappropriately, okay? So this is where my baseline caloric load is. My next step is to create a caloric an activity multiplier. Now, what we're going to do for all of you right now, because we didn't get all of your data in originally with your initial questionnaires, and your coach may make some adjustments based on that, but we are going to use 1.5. And you'll note over on my side over here on column 13, I've noted 1.5 is recommended for body transformation. So that's a very, very reasonable starting spot. Now, this is an activity multiplier. So we take our resting metabolic rate, multiply it by 1.5. And for myself in this example, this would give me a caloric load of 3,674.67, which you can see right there. So that would be my maintenance calorie. So if I want to maintain the weight, 246.6 pounds, and I don't want to change it, I would ingest 3,675 calories. So that is my maintenance caloric load. Now remember, this is based on calculations and an educated guess on the activity multiplier. We are going to be within a couple hundred calories tops, okay? It will be close, but it will not be perfect. So the next steps in the next 7 days are going to be incredibly important to you to calculating out your absolute correct loading of your calories, which is going to be imperative to making results in the quantum leap. So please pay attention here. This is incredibly important. So again, we'll go back to my numbers. 3,675 is my maintenance caloric load. Now, what we're going to do for everyone at the start is we're going to use a 0.75% of body weight loss. So we can choose as low as 0.5 up to 1%. We do not go above 1% of your body weight loss. And the reason we do not do that is that we'll start to lose too much muscle mass along with the fat mass. And that is not good for metabolic functioning as well as our performance in the gym or anywhere else. And usually with that big of a caloric cut, you start to run into a whole bunch of issues with adherence to diet as well and potential for increased binging. So we don't want that. The goal is more steady weight loss over an extended period of time to get to your long-term goals, which across 6 months, trust me, you will achieve. So we're going to use 0.75% of your body weight, which is a calculation based on mine. If I hit my caloric loads this week, I should lose 1.85. So you can see there's 4 decimal places there, but 1.85 pounds in 1 week. In order to do that, we use the rule of 3,500, which is going to mean in order to lose 1.84 pounds per week, I need to have a caloric cut of 6,473 calories across the week, which then across a day divided by 7 would equal a 925 calorie cut from my maintenance calories, which seems like a lot. But again, 1.8 pounds on a person my size is a substantial amount of weight. So your guys' numbers will be different based on your body weight, based on your body fat percentages and your lean body mass as to how these numbers will be calculated. But that's how these numbers are brought up. And that's why I always said that weight loss is actually incredibly simple on paper because it's just a calculation. It is truly, truly a calculation. The hard part is the application of those numbers, okay? Now, again, we've also mentioned earlier that this is a bit of an educated guess. It's a strong educated guess, okay? It's going to get you very close, which now what we're going to do is we're going to provide you your caloric loads for January 1st on. You are going to track perfectly, absolutely perfectly. You are going to be incredibly diligent on tracking every piece of food that you ingest. I need you to track it as closely as you can. And the closer and the more accurate you can be, the greater the results that you are going to achieve. There is no doubt about this. Now, there's a couple things that happen here. One, we get an accurate reading of the weight loss and the input. So that basic energy balance equation, we get a very good snapshot of that, which we can then back calculate where we need to move your calories to in the weeks following. But as you're also that diligent, you start to realize how easy it is to actually track food in MyFitnessPal. It's not as onerous as you may think. You just have to get in the habit of doing so. Okay. So you're going to start to understand what's in your food. You're going to start to realize where your protein comes from, where fats and carbohydrates come from. You're going to be more aware of the food that you're ingesting. So carrying on in our nutritional audit here, so we've said we're going to use 0.75%. We're going to go over to this activity multiplier right here of 1.5. The reason I have 1.3 to 1.6 is this is where probably 95% of the people fall that I work with on nutritional consultations. So and usually I will start with 1.5. So again, my caloric load was 3,675 for maintenance. My drop, I'm going to use the 0.75, which is the red line right here. As I do that, that means here, my 925 is the amount of calories I need to cut per day, which means minus the 3,674 minus 925 equals 2,750 calories. So my caloric load will be 2,750 calories this week, or right now moving forward, to maintain my weight loss of 1.84 pounds per week. And I will be doing this with you guys. So I'll use myself as a reference on future weeks as well. So I will be tracking all my information just like you are to give you an example of how this works. All right, so now that is our caloric load right there. So I'm going to scroll to the bottom of the screen and I'm going to drop in 2,750 here. I'm going to put it over here. This is the number that you guys will be looking for, that your coaches will put in your system, that you are then going to put in MyFitnessPal. Okay, 2,750 calories right there. That is my caloric load for weight loss at 0.75% of my body weight, right? 1.85 pounds per week. Now, as I move down from that, I've made my selection. The next step is to choose my protein. When you're choosing your protein goal, and this is priority number one, is protein of the macronutrients, and that's part of the 9 success rules for weight loss that we discussed in a different video. You now have a choice for protein loads. Now, this is going to be a good starting spot. What we're going to use is we're going to use the middle road right here, which we're going to use 1.09 grams per your lean body mass, which for myself is 231 grams of protein. Now, there's a few things that come into play here as to why you might get different numbers from your coach. One might be your current protein levels. If you can't hit these levels, so as an example, I know some people come in and they see me originally and they have a food log and we look at it and they're eating about 50 to 60 grams of protein a day. And I want them to hit 180 at the top level. That's going to be a big change for a lot of people, and that's not something they're comfortable with. So we'll use lower numbers and then over time, try and titrate that dose up to get to the appropriate numbers that we want. So how we break these numbers out, the first number, the top one here on line 30, 0.91 grams, we actually use that for hypertrophy and weight gain. Okay. Now, most people think when you want to gain weight in the gym that you should be having all kinds of protein shakes and eating copious amounts of protein. And it turns out that's actually not true. What we want to see is we want to maintain a high protein count, which again, this number is not a joke at 193 grams. That's a lot of protein relative to the normal person's diet or the traditional Western diet. So it's already high to begin with, but it's the lowest of our recommendations. So the 191 is going to be for people with hypertrophy and also goals, or people that struggle to get protein in, that we might keep them on the lower level. Now, the middle road right here is probably the truly is just the middle between hypertrophy and fat loss. So I'm going to jump by that one and come back to it. The very top one on line 32 is 1.27 grams per lean body mass. Now, this one we actually use for weight loss. To some degree, this is the end goal for a lot of people, is to get to this number, because protein, as we discussed earlier, is the highest satiating macronutrient, which is incredibly important when you're in a caloric deficit. When you're trying to lose weight, you need foods that are satiating so you don't have cravings and binges and you feel comfortable. So protein's exceptionally important. The next part is that protein has a high thermic effect of feeding, which we discussed in the previous video, but I'll repeat here. Every 100 calories or 100 grams of protein that you ingest, however you want to look at it, 20 to 30% of that is going to be used in simply digestion of that protein. So the thermic effect of feeding, it's called, okay? So the higher the protein count you have, the more calories that you will ingest that will not end up as part of your storage or end caloric goal. So they can be used to a greater degree with weight loss. And again, that's part of the satiation regions as well as a thermic effect of feeding. So our end goal with weight loss will be the higher protein count. You may or may not ever get there. It's not a mandatory by any means. And I actually choose the 231 for myself right now, solely because in my current eating pattern, I find it difficult to hit my 270 given the food choices that I have. I traditionally eat a few different meats that are a little bit higher in fat every once in a while, and I can't necessarily fit my calories in when I have too high of a protein. So then I'm required to use things like protein shakes and a lot of extra meats and things that I put in my diet, which right now I find difficult, and I want to make my diet simple. So because of that, I'm very comfortable at 230. So I'm going to use 230 for my protein goals. And I'll put that down at the bottom of my page here as well, 230 grams of protein. And I'm just going to drop this in here as well. And that just gives me my calculations. So it starts to auto-populate some of my numbers. Now, based on rule number 3 in the 9 rules for success of body transformation, we discussed the fat and the carbohydrates are immaterial as to how you get them. Okay, now this is incredibly important. We do understand this and repeat this again. The calories that you get from fat and carbohydrates are immaterial. I do not care where you get them from. What they should be chosen on is based on how you naturally eat, the style of eating that you choose. Okay, if you enjoy higher fat foods or you eat a lot of beef and things like that, as an example, you're going to have to choose a higher percent of calories coming from your fat. We try and stick that between 25 and 45 at the top end. So I'm just going to do a couple of calculations here just so that you can see the variations of how this might work. Now, I actually stick a little bit lower on my carbohydrates or my fat, I'm sorry. And the reason I do that is because I want to maximize the number of calories I get from carbohydrates. So carbohydrates are much more important to me in my diet, not for any other choice other than the fact that I just enjoy eating them. It's part of the way I ingest as well. So I naturally have a slightly I try and keep as much carbohydrates in my diet as I can tolerate. And that just comes down to what choices in meat I have for fat sources, things like that. So I'm just going to put 25% of my calories coming from fat, which works out to 102 grams of fat. So when I do that, I kick in 102 grams of fat. That allows me 227 grams of carbohydrates. So you can just see the total caloric count right here on lines 42 to 43. So I'm taking 233 grams of protein, which is 924 calories, 102 grams of fat, which is 918 calories, 227 grams of carbohydrates, which is 908 calories there for a total of my 2,750. So what you're going to see is possibly numbers in here. You're welcome to play with them inside of your nutritional auditor as well, because you do have an editing function, not just a view function. I would highly recommend you not tweak with any of this. And because we left that open, that means you also can mess with all the calculations. So please don't do that. But we're going to leave the carbohydrates and fat blank. We're actually not going to put anything in these cells right here, because that is for you to decide based on your eating profile. The two goals are the 2 numbers that you need right now, or calories, total calorie intake, and your protein intake. The rest you have to match and make fall into place however you will. A couple of points of concern. Note, the higher the fat content you have in your diet with a high protein content, you're going to have very low carbohydrates to ingest at the end of the day. And you'll find that the total volume of food will be very low as well, which is sometimes, and for many people, a major challenge when it comes to adherence to dietary means. So I do like to keep my fat a little bit lower for that reason. It allows me more volume of food throughout the day, which can help with satiation, the feelings of hunger, and the signals, if you will, of satiety and fullness. So again, this is an individual preference. It's very, very dependent on the person. I've had a few private conversations with a few of you guys when we did your assessments, and we talked about the different styles, evolutionary of eating. So that's a concept that a lot of people do believe in. I am also a firm believer in this, that depending on our heritage, our ancestry, there are some basic changes to our diet that we may want to choose. So in that case, some people could probably choose a slightly moderate level of protein with a higher level of fat and a lower level of carbohydrates based on their ancestry or where they grew up, things like that. And we're talking about multiple generations, not just where you grew up, right? This is a much deeper conversation. Maybe we can have it at a later point, but it's something to take into consideration. So I want to reemphasize here that none of these numbers are set in stone. But we are going to be providing you tools, these numbers, these two numbers from the coaches. You're going to see this in your nutritional audit, just like you can see right here. So you go into your files, you find these two numbers, and the next step is to put them into MyFitnessPal. Now, your job this week is to try and hit these as close as possible. The goals are to have your calories within 50 calories plus or minus every day. Your goals are to have your protein within 10 grams of your goal number every day. Where the carbs, where the fat falls, let it be, okay? You're just going to be simply watching your calories and your protein counts. Now, remember though, you're still trying to hit that caloric load, so you don't just get a freedom on carbs and fats. You have to just eat naturally, and then wherever they fall within the caloric loads will be where you end up choosing, okay? And they can be flexible day to day, of course, all right? There's nothing set in stone on those numbers. So I hope that all makes sense right there. Now, the next step is to go over to MyFitnessPal and to incorporate these numbers into your goals. Now, the only thing I'm going to say is that on MyFitnessPal, I have the professional edition. You may have the free edition, which is probably the best way to go. You do not need the professional edition. I have it for different reasons because I can share client files with myself through it. But for you guys, you may not be able to put in specific grams. You will only be able to put in and I'm going to draw a blank if it's percentages or grams that you can put in within 5, I think. So it's like I couldn't put 231 in, but I could put 230 maybe, right? Or a basic percentage split. So we'll go into the app and we'll go over that right now. The last thing I want to put on here we have to discuss is your weekly questions and your 7-day food log results. So as of January 1st, and if you want to start sooner, by all means do so. You're just going to have extra days. But from January 1st to January 7th, you are going to track every morsel of food that you put in to your mouth is going to be tracked in MyFitnessPal. And this is exceptionally important because what you need to do is you need to find an absolute baseline as to where your caloric loads are and where they need to move to. And it doesn't matter if you don't hit the goals absolutely perfectly, but it does matter you track perfectly everything. So even if I was over every single day, I had, instead of 2,750, I had, let's say we had 2,850 every single day. That's, you didn't hit the goals as we hoped, but what you did though is you did make sure to track your numbers correctly. I'm just going to jump out of here for the share. You did track your numbers correctly, and that way we can do a calculation. The rule of 3,500 we'll use to reset your numbers as we move forward. So again, how that works is, let's say that across the next week of tracking my 7 days, I lose exactly 1 pound on my average body weight. Then we know that my caloric load had a deficit of 3,500, not the whatever the heck it was. I'm sorry, I can't remember the number off the top of my head, 2,900 or whatever it was to get that 1.8. Okay. So I know my caloric deficit was 3,500 or an average of 500 per day. And then if I want to increase that and make that to a certain number, all I have to do is go back and do some calculations to readjust my caloric loads and my protein loads relative to them. So that way we can change them. So I need you guys to be exceptionally diligent on putting your original 7 days of tracking in, because those numbers will dictate your levels to follow, which is then going to, again, impact positively or negatively the amount of progress that you can make in the next few weeks. So I keep harping on this, but be as diligent as you can, okay, on your tracking. And again, if you're up or down, it's immaterial, but whatever you do ingest has to be taken in, and that means everything, okay? Everything that has a caloric content must be added in, okay? Then the next thing is we're going to go back to, we're going to go back to our screen share here for a second. I'm going to go over the 7-day food logs you're going to have. So once we're done, and I'll have another video on this next week, but when you're done that, what you're going to do is you're going to take your MyFitnessPal and you're going to drop in all of your numbers here. Okay. So as an example, I happen to know that last night I took in 229 grams of protein, and we'll just assume we'll make some of these up. So 231, 245, had a really high day, 224, had a low day, 229, 237 and 231. I hit it perfectly. Okay. Now what happens is it creates our average weekly content, which is 232.29, my average caloric load, and then my average percentage of what I created here. Okay. So now, this right here is what we want to see. And we want to see that for carbohydrates and fats. Now, we're not going to use these for anything other than understanding your eating habits, which then we can open up some conversations on maybe how we can change and modify this. Okay. So then that means I'm going to hit 227. And then I have fat grams here of 105. So that day I took in a total of 2,769. I was just over top of my caloric load. That's fine. But as you can see, I fill this out throughout the entire week. What I'm going to create is my total average weekly calories, my average protein, my average fat, my average carbohydrates. And if you want to add fiber in too, that'd be great, because we'd like to see where your fiber content is, which MyFitnessPal does track. So you can drop that in there as well. This one is not always completely accurate based on the fact that many of the food items you put into MyFitnessPal don't always track fiber correctly, depending on how they were put in. If they have the blue check mark, they will. If they've been put in by yourself or others, just note that you may be short on some fiber counts. But we do have a section on fiber coming up where we're going to want to see where you're at with fiber, because there is an important aspect of fiber for digestion, as well as weight loss and gut microbiome health that we're going to discuss in future lessons. So on the 7th of January, you're going to be required to fill this out completely, have this completely filled out so your coaches can review it. Based on this number, we're going to be taking your average caloric loads that you ingested across the 7 days, scooting back to your progress tracker, looking at your average body weight for that week as well, and then calculating out your appropriate caloric numbers that need to be adjusted for the future. So that is what your guys' job is right now. Now, the last thing I'm going to touch on here, I know this is getting long, is to utilize the weekly questions. We got very few of these in last time, but I actually want to get on your guys' case. Please put your questions in here every single week. This is a responsibility you have every Friday to update your weekly tracker, update your weekly question submission, and your weekly reflections. So on the weekly question, this would be things like all kinds of questions from the last week as you experimented with MyFitnessPal and logging food. What did you find? How did you do? Or do you have questions on maybe how to input a food? Whatever it might be, just this is a place that you can drop that question in, and we can communicate it in the future weeks as a team when I answer all the questions that come in. So I really hope that you guys utilize this please utilize this. Do it so that we can have a better communication between everyone. So use your weekly question submission, and then also fill out your weekly reflections here, where you start to understand how you can reflect on your week and what things you can do to improve your next week. So these things are incredibly important. I know that Christmas is a little tough and we haven't really officially got started. I understand that, but get in the habit of utilizing the weekly reflections and the weekly questions, please. So if I haven't addressed anything here, then that's where you can put in your weekly questions. Okay. But for now, I'm going to stop our share, head back to the screen. And now my next step is to go over how to input the numbers that we had from our nutritional audit into MyFitnessPal. So let's do that right now. All right, guys, here we are. We're with MyFitnessPal. So I'm going to jump into my app, and we're going to go over how to input your numbers into your goals for the week so you can see them in your diary. So this will be the home screen that you drop onto. I want to note the little blue plus sign at the bottom. When you're in here, you'll see that you can add different foods and exercise in here. Right now, all we're requiring you to do is your food and your weight. So I can add my daily weight in here. So you can see that I actually had 146.6 as I discussed earlier. So I've already put my morning weight in. But what I want you to do is slide over to the very bottom right-hand corner of the screen, and you're going to see the little 3 dots and the more. Click on that, and then slide down to maybe the 6th one down, goals, the little target button. You're going to click on that one. And when you get in here, you're going to see a whole bunch of different information that you guys can drop in here. Some of the stuff was just pre-regulated in here from different things that I've done. But now remember, I also have the professional edition here, which you may have the free edition, which is totally fine. We do not recommend you to get the pro edition. You can use the free edition. But you're going to go down to nutritional goals, the second subcategory here inside of this goals section. And it says calories, nets, carbs, protein, and fat goals. So I'm going to click on that right there. And then I'm going to input my data that I had originally. Now you can see that I actually have in here calories of 3,000. Okay, so I'm going to want to change that and And we're going to have to do that over inside of, so inside here, when I click on that, you can see it says I have to have an alert. I have to have change to percentages. So I'm going to need to go back to here and change this over to percentages. So just a really quick change for me. And I'll drop that in there. And I'm just going to adjust this just so I can get to my 100%, perfect. And now I can adjust my calories. So now I'm gonna adjust my calories. We said 2,750 calories was my weight loss goal relative to my 0.75% of total body weight lost that I want to be achieving. And then inside this, I wanna set up my numbers. Now my protein numbers were at 231. Now when you guys roll through here, you're gonna see that you may only be able to adjust by percentages, just like this right here. So I have 206, or 241. So I'm just going to have to go there. Now in my professional one, which I don't believe you guys have, I can scroll this through on absolute numbers here. So 231 for my my protein levels. And then we also had set the caloric levels. Now this is where then I have made a number that I dropped in there, but again, it's not something I'm going to be sticking to consistently or worrying about, but I do need to put something in here for MyFitnessPal. So those were my numbers to achieve 2,750 calories. So I will drop those in there. And now my daily log that I have will be appropriately updated. So if I go back out of here and I go back to my diary, and I look at what I had for breakfast today. Today I had my pita bread with some strawberries, some lean turkey burger, and some eggs. So I had 3 eggs, a lean turkey burger, a cup and a half of strawberries, and pita bread. Now when you're in here, you're gonna see I had a 740 calorie breakfast, which means I have 2,010 calories remaining for the rest of the day. And if I turn my phone to the side into landscape view, you're gonna see the breakdown of my meal and the macronutrients. And if I slide down to the very bottom, you're gonna see what's remaining and where my goals are. So you can see what's happening here. So throughout the day, I don't worry too much about the fat and the carbohydrate contents. What I worry about is the protein content and the caloric content, and where the rest falls is where they fall. And you can see then I can track throughout the day how much I have left. And this is then where you get into all the different methods of how you put together your meal plans and your tracking for the day, okay? So that is how you update your goals inside of MyFitnessPal. I hope that was helpful. Drop some comments on YouTube if you wish, or if you're working with us, then please talk to your coach and we will help you out to make sure that you have all your numbers in correctly. All right, thanks a lot, guys. Appreciate it. Have a great day.